On the 10th of December 1945, inside of Landsberg Prison, a former Nazi and war criminal was led up to the stairs of the gallows, and he was handed over to the executioner, who placed a black cap over his head. Throughout the Second World War, there were many men who turned into brutal and barbaric war criminals, and only a select few would ever be brought to trial for their crimes. Many managed to hide out, and there had been acts of slaughter carried out by German people inside of towns and settlements, and there were specific accounts of airmen being brutally killed when they should have been taken as prisoners of war. Franz Xaver Strasse was a local leader for the Nazis in Bohemia and Moravia, the present-day Czech Republic, and he would be responsible for the executions and shootings of 5 American airmen, and he personally shot 2 of these. He became, at the end of the conflict, the first war criminal to be judged at the Dachau trials, and was one of the first condemned inside of a prison where Hitler had been held. Join us today as we look at the execution of Franz Xaver Strasse, and as always, to support our channel, please make sure to subscribe. Franz Xaver Strasse was born on the 18th of September 1899 in Grunau im Anntal in Austria. Little is known about his early life, and he would rise throughout the Nazis' ranks to the rank of Kreisleiter, or a district leader. This title and rank was a political one, and was meant to provide Nazi district coordination, and it was a rank of local government. The Kreisleiters would wear special armbands to show their status, and they were the 4th tier in the Nazi party hierarchy, behind Führer or Hitler at the top, the Reichsleiter, then the Gauleiter, and then came the Kreisleiter. But on the 9th of December 1944, around 6 months before the Second World War would come to an end, Franz Strasse committed a horrific crime that would result in his execution, and he would go to the gallows for this. In Koplitz in Czechoslovakia, a B-17 Flying Fortress bomber crashed in a field. Pilot Warren Woodruff landed the aircraft, and 4 members of the plane's crew remained with him following this. The men then voluntarily surrendered to the Germans, and they were then taken away in a truck. The aircraft had encountered problems, and it was said that the plane could not go through the Alps. It's believed that the aircraft had been looking to bomb a refinery at Must, and only 17 of the aircraft in the raid dropped their payload of bombs. Others that could not find the target flew over a replacement target, the weapons factories and train stations in Pilsen. However, it was this specific Flying Fortress's 42nd mission of the Second World War. On board were Woodruff J. Warren the pilot, Donald L. Hart, Frank Pinto Jr., George D. Mayotte, and Joseph Cox. But after the aircraft landed following malfunction, the local German authorities received a report to their headquarters in Koplitz about this. 2 cars drove to the landing site, and in one of them was the district commander Franz Strasse, and in the other was the commander of the Gestapo, Walter Wolf, along with Captain Karl Lindemeyer, the chief of the police. When the Germans got there, they surveyed the aircraft, and then took their weapons off the Americans. Lindemeyer ordered the truck driver to make space for the Americans to be transported, and a conversation was heard between Strasse and Lindemeyer that said, "The pilots sent us to heaven, and we will give them back." The colony of vehicles set out towards Koplitz, but when they reached the village of Nazi-Dilla, they turned off the main road. They went around 100 metres east of an inn, then the truck came to a stop sign, and with this Captain Lindemeyer ordered the Americans to get off the truck. They got out, and the Americans realised what was happening. Armed with their machine guns, Karl Lindemeyer and Franz Strasse fired countless bullets into their prisoners, and the Americans were slaughtered. It was said that blood flowed from their mouths and ears, and the snow around them turned red. Franz Strasse personally shot 2 of the Americans, and then the assassins stole their clothes, shoes and valuables, and the corpses of the American airmen were left in the snow in their underwear. All those who witnessed were ordered to cover up the bodies, and they were terrified. The bodies of the Americans were then buried in a shallow grave near to the ditch where they were murdered, and in May 1945 the remains of 5 airmen were recovered from the graves by the 26th Infantry Division. They were then repatriated to the Military Cemetery No. 1 in Nuremberg for reburial. Over the next few weeks, investigations as to what happened took place, and many of the airmen were identified by their dental records, and their families were then told what had happened. After the surrender of Germany, The American authorities then sought the men who were involved in the shootings, and they searched for Franz Strasse, and he was located and then arrested. He was then imprisoned to await a war crimes trial, and was brought in front of a US military court inside of Dachau concentration camp on the 24th of August 1945. He was accused of war crimes relating to the executions of a number of American airmen who should have been given some form of protection as a prisoner of war. But they were not, and because of this Strasse was blamed for the slaughter of specifically 2 of the men. There were other men sought after, and Strasse's trial pinned all of the blame upon him and Lindemeyer, and because of this Strasse was then sentenced to death. Franz Strasse was then sent to Landsberg Prison to await his execution, and his death sentence was confirmed, and because of this he would be executed on the 10th of December 1945. It's believed that his executioner was the infamous John C. Woods, the botching executioner of the Nuremberg trials, who had very sketchy credentials with regards to being an executioner, and he was referred to as a brute who would make a number of mistakes during different executions. Strasse on the 10th of December 1945 was led from his prison cell into the courtyard of Landsberg, where the gallows had been made. He was flanked by a number of American guards and military policemen, and also a priest had been appointed to give him spiritual comfort and guidance in his final moments. When Strasse approached the gallows, his arms and legs were secured, and he was then led up the steps and onto the platform where John C. Woods stood opposite him. Woods seized possession of his prisoner and victim, and Strasse then said his final words to the priest before the executioner performed the final checks, and he then placed a black hood over his head, and then the noose was secured. But Franz Xaver Strasse was then shuffled over the trapdoor, and then John C. Woods released the trapdoor, and through this Strasse fell, and he would be dead within a matter of minutes, before his body was placed inside of a coffin. There were many accounts of American airmen being slaughtered when they fell into the hands of the enemy. As the Allies were performing large bombing raids on German cities and towns, the German public who captured these people often justified the killing of airmen, as the bombs they would drop would lead to the deaths of their civilians. But Franz Xaver Strasse held this belief, and it was clear that he made the decision that day to slaughter the 5 Americans who should have been given a better course of treatment and should have been regarded as prisoners of war. He would meet his end on a gallows inside the same prison that Adolf Hitler was held decades before, and he would lose his life at the hands of an American executioner who would go on to take the lives of many of the most high-profile Nazis. Thanks for watching. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe, and once again, thank you so much for watching.